The French knights, already eager for glory, needed no encouragement. They spurred their war horses forward, not at the English, but at their own retreating crossbowmen. French heavy cavalry deliberately trampling their own men. A Genoese survivor, Giovanni Grimaldi, left this account. The French horses were upon us before we could move. They rode over us as if we were wheat to be threshed. I saw my captain split in half by a knight's sword, not an English knight, a French one. The Black Prince, watching from the English right wing, reportedly turned to his aide. Are they mad? The aide's response was prophetic. No, my lord, they are French. They value their honor above their lives. As the trampled Genoese mixed with charging knights, the English archers adjusted their aim. Now they had perfect targets. French cavalry bunched together, moving uphill through mud, tangled with their own fleeing infantry. And what came next would haunt France for generations. The mathematics of destruction were simple and horrific. 10,000 archers, each loosing 10 arrows per minute, created an artillery barrage centuries before gunpowder would dominate battlefields. In the first minute alone, 100,000 arrows darkened the sky, a whistling cloud of death that turned day to dusk. Count Alençon led the first charge uphill, his banner of royal blue emblazoned with golden fleurs-de-lis. Behind him rode the finest of French chivalry, men whose families had fought at Bouvines, at Taillebourg, whose ancestors had ridden with Charlemagne himself. They charged through their own dying crossbowmen without hesitation. The arrow storm found every weakness. While plate armor could turn a direct hit, arrows found gaps at joints, under arms, through visors. But the horses had no such protection. A destrier worth more than a peasant's village would scream and tumble with 6 arrows in its chest, crushing its rider beneath half a ton of thrashing muscle and steel. But then came the moment that would echo through centuries. The hidden pits claimed their first victims. Knights in full charge suddenly vanished, their horses' legs snapping like twigs as they plunged into concealed holes. The charge's momentum became its doom, as following riders crashed into the fallen. By the 6th charge, patterns emerged from chaos. French knights would reform at the slope's base, their numbers swelled by new arrivals. They'd begin their charge with battle cries, only to meet the same arithmetic of death, 100,000 arrows per minute turning flesh and steel into ruin. The Welsh knifemen added a new horror. These light infantry carrying long daggers called misericordia swarmed over fallen knights like wolves. A nobleman worth a king's ransom in capture became worthless metal and meat. They slipped blades through visor slots, underarm joints, into any gap their knives could find. The screams of dying nobles mixed with the continuous whistle of arrows. As horses and men fell, they created barriers of flesh and steel. New charges had to navigate not just mud and arrows, but mounds of their own dead. The English had turned the slope into a slaughterhouse where French nobility queued for execution. Then blind King John of Bohemia made his choice for immortality. The 50-year-old monarch, sightless for a decade, commanded his knights, "Take me forward, that I may strike one blow with my sword." His bodyguards tried to dissuade him, asking what glory lay in a blind man's death. But John understood something his pragmatic advisors didn't. This was the last great charge of classical chivalry, and he would not miss it. They tied his horse's reins to 2 knights with golden chains. As they rode uphill, John raised his sword, guided by the sounds of battle. An English archer named Will Scathlock watched them come. The blind king rode straight as any seeing man, his sword high. We knew who he was, everyone knew, and we killed him just the same. The French had discovered what they thought was the English weakness, the 16-year-old Prince Edward commanding the right wing. If they could break the boy, English morale might shatter. The 14th charge concentrated on his position with terrible fury. For 20 minutes, the Black Prince faced the concentrated might of French chivalry. Knights who'd broken through the arrow storm, who'd survived the pits and stakes, who'd climbed over their own dead, crashed into the English line with desperate fury. The prince's standard fell twice, and twice his household knights raised it again. Edward III watched his son's position buckle and refused to send help. When the Earl of Northampton begged permission to reinforce the prince, the king's response became legend. "Let the boy win his spurs. The day shall be his." The king understood what others didn't. This wasn't cruelty, but calculation. The Black Prince needed to earn his men's respect through blood, and earn it he did. Contemporary accounts described the prince fighting with controlled fury, his black armor making him a shadow of death in the melee, but it was his calmness that inspired his men. While others panicked, he gave orders as if drilling in the castle yard. The French bodies piled so high they formed ramparts. Attacking knights had to climb walls of their own dead to reach English lines. As darkness fell, Philip VI fled with just 5 knights. His departure triggered complete collapse. French formations dissolved into every man for himself, panic. The narrow approaches that had compressed their advance now trapped their retreat. Thousands died in the crush, trampled by their own comrades. English archers and Welsh infantry pursued through the darkness. Without moonlight, armor became a death trap. Knights who fell couldn't rise without help. The Welsh killed by sound, striking at any clink of metal. French nobles threw away identifying coats, hoping to pass as common soldiers. The citizens of Crécy town, hearing of French defeat, emerged to join the slaughter. Centuries of noble oppression ended with peasants beating knights to death with farming tools. The social order didn't just fracture, it shattered completely. By midnight, silence finally fell. Dawn on August 27th revealed devastation beyond medieval comprehension. English heralds tasked with counting the dead moved through a landscape from hell. The final tally defied all military logic. French dead included King John of Bohemia, Count Louis of Flanders, Count Charles of Alençon, 1,542 nobles of name, 2,300 knights and men-at-arms minimum, and unknown thousands of common soldiers. English losses? 3 men-at-arms killed, 40 to 100 archers and infantry, less than 200 total casualties. This is where brilliant tactics met French stubbornness. Every French mistake compounded into catastrophe. Wet crossbow strings, charging through their own men, refusing to wait until morning, ignoring terrain. Beyond tactics lay a deeper truth. The English had reimagined warfare while France fought yesterday's battles. Crécy's aftermath reshaped Europe more profoundly than any treaty. The death of 1,542 nobles in 3 hours created unprecedented social mobility. Merchant families bought noble titles from widows desperate for income. Common soldiers who'd proven themselves at Crécy demanded and received rewards previously reserved for nobility. The rigid feudal hierarchy cracked, then crumbled. But here's the philosophical earthquake that changed everything. Crécy proved God didn't favor noble blood. For centuries, aristocracy justified itself through divine right. Noble victory proved heavenly approval. Crécy's arithmetic, 3 English deaths versus 1,500 French nobles, suggested God preferred English yeomen. That thought, more than arrows, killed the medieval worldview. Technology's triumph over tradition became Crécy's lasting lesson. The longbow required a decade of training, but it democratized killing. A peasant archer could destroy a duke at 200 yards. Range mattered more than lineage. Every military innovation, afterward gunpowder, artillery, firearms, followed Crécy's template, technology multiplying common men's power. Those 3 English men-at-arms who died, history preserved their names. John de Bohun, Robert Bryce, and William Stoughton. 3 deaths that changed the world, not through their dying, but through the 1,500 noble corpses surrounding them. Their statistical insignificance became historically significant, proof that warfare's fundamental nature had shifted forever. The mud of Crécy didn't just swallow French knights, it buried an entire age. The longbow's democratic power, requiring skill, not birth, pointed toward a future where merit mattered more than bloodline. Every arrow that found a gap in noble armor was a vote against the medieval order, a declaration that the future belonged to those who adapted, not those who inherited. Crécy teaches us that innovation plus discipline defeats tradition plus arrogance every time. When the arrow storm cleared and the corpses were counted, more than a battle had ended. The age of chivalry lay dead in Picardy mud, and the modern world had begun its violent birth. If you want to explore more moments where history pivoted on a single day's violence, where the impossible became inevitable, and entire civilizations transformed in hours, then subscribe to Flow of History. We bring you the battles, the betrayals, the blood-soaked turning points that made our world. Hit that subscribe button now, because the next story of impossible odds and world-changing carnage is coming soon.